Welcome, everybody. It's your boy, the VSW Stoner. We're here with a very special episode of VSW Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, the one and only RussTache. Let's bring him on. Welcome.
How's it going? How you doing, Versace?
Doing good. I'm a little jealous. Mine doesn't quite twirl. Just kind of hangs.
Oh, just give it a little time. You'll be all right. You'll be all right.
Impressive, I have to say. It's the first thing I noticed was the mustache when I last saw you wrestle. I was like, that's a true man. Because something about mustaches, I don't know. It's always drawn me to pro wrestling, probably ever since I saw Rick Rude.
Oh, that's fair. Rick Rude is definitely a very good mustache example. I mean, you also have like TA Magnum. There's just a lot of really good mustachioed wrestlers out there that you know that they just Ox Baker. I mean, there's a lot of them.
Even some little guys, like Anthony Green, he has a very nice mustache.
Oh,
Um, Sidney,
absolutely.
Sidney Bacabella had a very nice mustache for a little bit. A lot of people on the scene. I think it's coming back, the mustache.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
But
Think may have overtaken the goatee.
yes. It's finally kind of surpassed and went back. So let me ask you, when did you get into pro wrestling?
Why did I get into pro wrestling?
No, when?
When? Oh, pardon. I trained originally back in 2008, up in Glens Falls, New York, but I didn't really break into wrestling until about 2012, 2013. Um, Started really wrestling in central Pennsylvania and what have you for a while, for about 7 or 8 years. And then slowly but surely started making my way over to New Jersey and Rhode Island and Massachusetts and what have you.
Nice. Pennsylvania's a nice scene out there. I've kind of gotten a glimpse of some of it, traveling to some of the far ends of Jersey to watch some indie wrestling. It seems to be a good
Right.
mix of talent because you got a lot of people coming in from New York. You do got the Jersey people coming over. Some Mass people do go up there. What was
Oh,
the scene
absolutely.
like? What was the scene like when you broke in?
Oh, when I broke in, I went to central Pennsylvania, so that's a bit more like further east, or not further east, pardon me, further west than like the Philly scene or what have you. But it
Yeah,
was a nice blend of like talent from say like the Maryland and Virginia area and what have you. So it's pretty nice. Um, like it was an interesting blend of people because during that time, I mean, I got to see like folks that were up and comers like Action Andretti, Sonny Kiss. These were some of my contemporaries that I was coming up with. I mean, Killian McMurphy is still doing a whole bunch of stuff down in the Maryland scene, and like he's been doing quite a few things in New Jersey and what have you.
yeah.
Um, it's it's been pretty. It's pretty nice to like see people come up and actually be quite successful. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's, something that, makes, for me anyways, the wrestling scene or the indie scene stand out is that you can almost follow someone's career arc and you can watch them when
Right.
they're coming in and you can see them on TV. And
Absolutely.
sometimes it happens rather fast. Be like a couple of years,
Oh,
uh, you know.
absolutely.
But
Yeah.
so when you got in, were you training out of school? Did you just start like working from home? How did that come about?
I was training at a school. I trained at a school run by a gentleman by the name of J.P. Black. I had trained with a few folks, and that lasted for a good few months. And then for a little while, I fell out of it, didn't really train or anything along those lines. And then in about 2012, 2013, got back in with this guy named Wolfman and got back to working out, had a tryout in his school. And then, yeah, they got me back into going pro and what have you, and, continuing on further from there.
Kind of kick-started the whole career up and like you said, got you out
Yeah,
working, moving around. Um,
absolutely.
now is this something like when you were a kid, you were like, I want to get in there, I want to fight, I want to be a wrestler? Or was this something that kind of just came by opportunity?
Yeah, it came by opportunity, to be honest with you. You know, uh, when I was a kid, it like, it was like kid stuff. Like it was messing around in class and what have you, or whatever. Like after like teacher went away for a little bit, so you're wrestling around and fun crap like that. Um, but it was one of those things where like, I grew up with three younger brothers, so like, we wrestled around, horseplay, stuff like that. Wasn't anything where when I first was growing up where I thought it was something that you could just go to a school and start doing. It was kind of wasn't exactly um, a thought that I had. And it wasn't even really a thought at first because, like, strangely enough, for a little while I did a little bit of backyard wrestling and whatnot. And the way that got introduced to me was when I was like 21. So I wasn't even like a teenager kid or anything like that. I was like 20 or 21, and I was working at Hot Topic, and someone just happened to hear me talk about wrestling, and he's like, "Oh, do you do that wrestling thing?" And he just caught up with me and told me of
Yeah.
this place. And going to that backyarding place is how I met the guy who got me into training for wrestling and whatnot. So it's like kind of like, it was a little bit of a leapfrog, but
But I've seen that before, and I've seen that in like a lot of places. Like everybody and everything has to have kind of a starting point, and if you don't have that
yeah,
legitimate starting point, and I'm not saying everybody go out and start a promotion backyard or not, but sometimes
no,
you
of
have like
course,
some very well trained people out there that might just they might be in the industry and they're like, I want to do something, but I don't want to have to pay all these pricing and renting and the ring and all that. So they do a
right.
backyard. They bring in a couple of their friends. They train them a little bit, but a lot of people
Oh,
sometimes get their first start there, and depending on what they do with that start, some might hang around the backyard forever, but some of them take that start, they learn what they learn, and they go with it, and they end up getting to the next
well,
level, and they end up going to schools and train.
absolutely. Yes. I mean, but that's the thing is they usually take those proper steps that continue on forward from that. Like, because I won't sit here and say like, oh my God, disgusting backyard. Like, I feel like backyard means something different now than what it did like 20, 25 years ago. Like 20,
Yeah, I
25.
mean,
Like,
'21
what I'm talking about is
yeah,
it
I was gonna say,
was,
well, like when I came out of high school, I was like 2001. Backyard was
oh, me
literally
too.
backyard. We had people
Yeah.
outside, barbed wire that we would buy by the roll at Home Depot. We were throwing ECW events for fun, and people were just beating the shit out of each other for no good reason. Most of the moves, were done how we would think they would be done. Most of them very stiff.
Right.
But again, we were just imitating
Right.
what we saw on TV. And it wasn't until later that we'd say, "Oh, there was a school, near us, or there was this." And some of us tried, some of us didn't. Other people just, grew up. Me personally, I took time off. I went into boxing, but that's how, like, when
Hmm.
I think of backyard originally, that's how I think. And then like later, I was introduced to more something that would be considered backyard, and it was a little bit more different. It was a little bit more, I would say, professionalized backyard, if that makes sense.
Right. Right. No, it does. I would say that like I was starting off, it was not very good because it was like mattresses for like the ring pad or whatever stuff like that. But like eventually, I did get exposed to better backyard feds that like actually had real rings, and like you said, there was people that were actually training or were trained or actually had a bit more ring awareness and what have you. But that still only goes so far, like until you actually go to a school and like
Yeah, you
tighten
got to
things
take
up. Like,
you got to take that next step. You got to follow the right lead. Say, okay, I like this. I kind of like this feel. Now let's do it. The right way. Learn how to be safe.
right,
Number one, because I think that's the
right,
biggest issue with backyard wrestling. It's not so much that it's backyard or it's this and that. It's the safety factor because people getting
yep,
concussed, people breaking bones, necks, everything. When you're a kid, it
absolutely,
doesn't really matter. I feel, you're a young kid, you're taking hits, it's kind of fun in games. When you get a little bit older and you
right,
see people doing it's like these injuries take time to heal.
right,
And some of them can be like, pretty, severe. You land the wrong way, you're gonna get hurt.
right,
Um,
right,
and you need to learn how to do that. You need to learn how to get, not only, bump
yeah,
yourself, but also how to protect your opponent, because that's also your number one job in a match is also keeping him and her safe.
right,
But I am glad, like you said, you got out of that, you started doing all of that, and about what do you say, like 2012, 13, you're moving out on the scene.
Yeah.
What were some of the promotions you started working for at that time?
Initially, I started working for SWO. That was a place that I hung around for a while. And then I started working for Pizza Party Wrestling when that popped up. I want to say I started off the first year with those guys, and then there was like a bit of a drifting away for a while. They were running a little bit less, and just schedules weren't really lining up. And then after SWO, that turned into me wrestling for Truly Independent Wrestling out of Massachusetts. And
Okay.
sometimes I would wrestle for them and also SWO, for a little while. I still appear at SWO every once in a while down more towards the York, Pennsylvania area. And then beyond that, within last year, I started making appearances for RWA in Rhode Island. And then
Nice.
just made my debut for Northeast Championship Wrestling, which that's at the Rumble show. And then coming up this Saturday, on the 21st, I'm making my debut for uh, uh, Proving Grounds against the Dick Busters.
That's
Yeah,
going to be a lot of fun.
with oh, absolutely, with Danny Adam, Carnivore versus the Dick Busters. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a pretty good interaction. It'll be pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna be at that show. We're we're actually sponsoring. We're gonna have a little booth there, selling some old figures and stuff,
Nice.
and talk about my podcast, and see if anybody
Yeah.
wants to come on like you and talk. I always, like I said, talking to you, and I always have fun at proving ground shows. There's something about that atmosphere and something about just the whole style of it. It's funny, sort of like back before the pandemic, like 2019. I'm a very visual person, so
Hmm.
if something catches my eye, it doesn't even matter what it is. I want to be interested in. And I saw a proving ground post, and it was like based off an old video game, and it just caught my nostalgia, caught my eye. I was like, I must see this. I don't know what it is. I don't know
Right.
what it's gonna be, but I want to see it. And
Right.
I made sure I bought tickets, even though it wasn't coming back right off. That show was going to get canceled because 2020, but still bought the ticket knowing that when it comes back, I'll get to see it, and I wasn't disappointed. It has its own
Right.
aura about it. You'll see that. It's a lot of fun. Dick Buster's household name. It's a fun team. Dick Lane, always a fun guy, and like I said, it's just good wrestling, but good storytelling. Just it has a production level like nothing I've really seen in a lot of the indie shows that I go to. Very nice camera work, like beautiful camera work.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. There's so far from what I've seen, like in the New England area, the production values are pretty up there. They're pretty good. So
Yeah,
I've
yeah. We
heard
we
well, I've heard about Proving Ground, so I'm just I'm quite looking forward to it because I enjoy when because it just goes to show you like you invest just a bit into yourself and it just shows you what you can present that much better.
yeah, and even just getting to NCW and the Rumble, that was a fun time. I was, that's where I first actually caught eye of you wrestling was there. Again,
Right.
noticing the big mustache and being like, wow, this is somebody different. Like you don't see that too very often. And that kind of
No, you
again,
have you haven't quite
but
seen me have just as much fun with it just yet.
no, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm like, if this guy can do that in a Rumble set, I'm like, I can't wait to see what he can do in a full match, or something else. And I think again, like I said, a very visual person. So when I see somebody come out colorful and big mustache and nice character work, it draws me back to my childhood of why I fell in love with wrestling in the first place.
Oh, well, thank you. It's kind of one of the points of why I work the character the way I do and whatnot. It's like don't get me wrong, doing cool wrestling moves is a part of wrestling. That is one of the things that we do. But you also got to be memorable as well, doing those cool moves and what have you. It's just like you
Yeah,
gotta
like
actually draw. Go ahead.
well, I look at it like an action movie. Like you got to have really cool action scene, but then you got to have good dialogue and a good story. Otherwise, it's just gonna be just a bunch of action.
Right, right. Absolutely. And unless you're a movie like Hardcore Henry, a bunch of action doesn't always work.
No, no. And again, I think that's something that for a little while almost was lacking in pro wrestling. At least what I saw on TV was good
Mm,
developed characters. A lot of people went this athletic route where, I'm a pro wrestler, and that's
hmm
cool. But like when I grew up looked at a pro wrestler on TV, there was no denying what they were. They were a pro wrestler. That person couldn't work at Starbucks. That person couldn't be over there doing that. These people were huge monsters. Part of
hmm
that was me being a kid, but also was just the way they presented themselves on camera and the way they acted. Like George the Animal Steel, you would never know he was a school teacher. He was sitting there
Right.
ripping the buckle apart. And then after a while, I feel like, in the scene, you see people and they're like, okay, they're coming out to names that maybe aren't so memorable. They're not using characters. They're coming out to, like John or Mike or whatever. And it's bringing more
Right.
realism into it. The moves are still there, the wrestling's still there, but the character of that, just almost a differential between real life and what wrestling is. The escape is like kind of disappeared sometimes. It's like, oh, okay. And for me personally, I get more excited when I start seeing the kayfabe end of it. Just the people having fun and
Right.
bringing these crazy characters to life because it's not something you can see every day.
True. That's fair. I think that's kind of one of the reasons why, like, my wrestling name is a blend of my real name and just my gimmick too, though, is because, like, I feel like there's a way to do both. Like there is a way to have a character and whatnot, but still, like, there's still ways to have cool moves. There's still ways to do things where, like, this stuff it can be all of it. It's just, I feel like a little bit more. I don't know. I feel like for me personally, the gimmicky thing, like, Rustache, like, come on. It makes sense. Like, I'm somebody who will sit here and make continuous puns about myself. Like, if I didn't have Rustache, I would be a character that was foolishly in love, and call myself Amorous, or something along those lines. It would just make some kind of sense to me for some reason. I don't know, but like I feel like it almost gives myself a plot device to work off of. It's just like, well, here's a goofy aspect of me, so let's work off of that.
And that's what I've kind of heard around just people I talk to that, a wrestler will usually kind of take a character and kind of make an extension of themselves, maybe extra features or more flamboyant or whatever you want to add to it. So it's kind of, personal, but it's and comfortable, but it's also something you can have fun with and move it around and play with
Right,
it.
right. Like, funny
Um,
enough, for the first couple of years when I was doing Rustache, this was a little bit shorter. I didn't have this, and it was just up to here. And for the first year or two, I didn't like having the mustache. It was kind of a pain in my ass. And then I grew it out this much longer. Actually, not that much of a problem anymore.
makes it easier now that it moves to the side.
Yep.
um, Now I see you working right now. You've been scheduled for tag team action. Is that something you normally do as tag teams?
Yeah, for the most part, for the longest time when I was wrestling at SWO, I was a singles wrestler. I would say the tag team stuff kind of developed in the last like 5 to 6 years. Like, it wasn't necessarily something that I specialized in at first, but then as time went on, it just happened to be something that I've just found to have a bit more success in as a wrestler. Because there was a point in time where tag teams, like consistent tag teams that traveled, it's a little bit tougher to come by. It's a little bit more common now, but like for a bit there.
Yeah, and plus having tag teams and are actual tag teams and not just makeshift people thrown together, it makes a difference. Again, growing up in that
Right.
era, I grew up with all these crazy tag teams like Demolition, Heart Foundation, British Bulldogs, Conquistadors, like even goofy ones, but they all looked
Yep.
alike. Um,
Right.
and sometimes, on the indies and even on, regular wrestling, whatever, you'll have the first guy come out, he comes out to his tune, he comes out with his little spotlight, and then they announce the next guy, and he comes out to his own song, and he's got his own little entrance, and he's wearing his own gear, and these guys are just,
Right.
thrown together. It's like, oh, okay, but me personally, again, I like to see a tag team that comes out with some kind of matching gear. They can work off each other. The gimmicks kind of work off each other in some sense or
Right.
form. Something makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
But I do
funny
like
enough.
tag teams.
Yeah. Tag teams they're good wrestling, man. Like all wrestling's good wrestling, to be honest with you. But um, yeah, tag team wrestling is pretty fun, especially if you can find people who start jiving together pretty well. It ends up being pretty easy, like easy going. Like some people would find it like nerve wracking and whatnot. Like for instance, there are times where say I'm having an off day and Danny will just be right there and he just goes, "All right, Russ, I've got this, and this," and it's just like in just a few seconds, I'm just already locking right back in because he's already got what he needs lined up in his head. And I'm just like, all right, let me put that on the back burner. Let's get through this and what have you. And vice versa. Like there's times where he'll get worked up and I'm just like, hey, buddy, all we got to remember is this, and this. And then it just locks right back in. So it's kind of nice to have that person that has your back as you're going through stuff.
Yeah, and I would think that it is always nice to have somebody that's there to kind of watch your back because I mean, not that you're gonna get into any real altercation, but like, again, something might happen. You might get a little tired. You might even get a little lost. You can at least tag your partner, get out, take a couple seconds,
Right.
regroup, get back in, and everything just kind of flows together and works without having to kind of find another way to kind of stop the match. It's kind of a normal thing to do. Tag your partner.
Right. True. That is very true.
But yeah, like I said, I always find tag team wrestling to be something interesting because it not only does it tell a story of sometimes four people, but when like you said, everything jives right. It's like even those four people that are in that match, they could do some amazing things together when everybody's working
Oh,
together.
absolutely. Absolutely. You can, there was some very unexpected things that had happened while myself and Danny had been tag team champions in TIW. One of those things was we were in a program with a tag team by the name of DNA. And I mean, I'll tell you, man, over the course of like a year, me and Danny could not catch a break. Like if it wasn't me or him sick, like right before, like one of the times I got COVID, like when we were supposed to wrestle Buff Inc. And unfortunately, that was the only time that I had a chance to be booked against Buff Inc. And yeah, I got COVID, so there I went. But before that, people were getting sick, and so one of the tag team champions at the time got COVID, and so they had to substitute in someone. Thankfully, there was like a third man like to their tag team, so thankfully there was somebody to sub in. But the nice thing was with those three opponents, um, Corey Jackson subbed in for Denim Kovic. And then so it was Adam Stone versus Corey Jackson versus myself and Danny Adam. And it was just a great match. Like it was like I'd done a ladder match before, but like to that caliber, it was pretty awesome. And yeah, it for something that like seemed like, oh great, like because we already had things mapped out in our heads, like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. And then the other guy had to switch out, and it's like, all right, well, let's go out there and put on a good show. And turned out great. So sometimes things just click like that.
Plus, I mean, a tag team ladder match on the indie scene just sounds wild in general. I don't think I've ever seen that. I've seen ladder matches, but not with a tag team. That must have been fun.
Oh, it was surprisingly fun. It was like a good 15 to 20 minute affair. So it was interesting.
Well, just something different too. You don't really often see. Not every show brings in ladders. And that's the thing. Not every show brings in a gimmick match. Some shows just run straight matches or maybe one no holds barred. So it is kind
Right.
of cool to see those things because you see it more often on TV. But to get to TV now, it's like you got to sell an arm, a leg. It's expensive. The prices that go have gone crazy. Where the indie scene has kind of stayed the same. You can catch good wrestling in
Absolutely.
Worcester like every night, every Thursday night for $10. You can go down to Worcester and watch wrestling. That's cheap. I can't
That's
eat for
true.
$10. I can't eat for 10.
Yeah, nobody can really these days.
No, and that's the thing, you go to a show, it's not even more just the ticket. It's like you got the ticket, then you got the food. Even if you're going to an
Right.
indie show, you got to stop and get food somewhere. So it's like the cheaper you can buy the ticket for the more value. And I find the most value right now on the indie scene because you are seeing people that are at that level. You've seen people that are coming back from the TV, like Dijak's
Right.
now back on the scene, and then you see people,
Right.
like I
Which
said,
is
that are
huge.
going to the scene.
Right. Right. That are definitely like working on their way up. Like, I mean, you see how many people are talking about Ichiban. I mean, it's only a matter of time, like
I've heard his name
it's
mentioned
just
3 times this week. He's like
right.
one of the like number one prospects to be called somewhere.
Right. So it's really cool to see how it's just a matter of time for a lot of stuff like that.
Now, what would you say would be some of your most memorable matches you had?
Oh, well, I'd say, well, that ladder match was definitely one of them. I want to say, uh, there was a couple of matches. One particularly was me versus Ace Dallas at SWO. It was at one of their church shows. Um, and the whole story behind that was we were both part of this thing called the Super Cup tournament. And the idea was you wrestled in qualifier matches, and then you had two fatal four ways. And I think one year we did four fatal four ways, and then all four winners of that went on to go on a final fatal four way to determine the number one winner. And so what we did is that he had me in the Devil's Triangle, like Undertaker's submission hold there,
Yep.
and as he had me in that, we timed it so that right as I rolled his shoulders into a pin, and right as he was getting pinned, as three hit, I tap out. So then we concluded that by having me and him face at like their version of WrestleMania, which was at this church show that was done for charity, and like they get a very large crowd there. And um, although my nerves were really high for that because this was like probably my biggest match since coming back. Um, you know, he was a very grounded, like even though he was very early in his career at the time, he was very grounded. It was just like, hey, take it slow. We'll be all right. And we just had a hell of a match. It was very good. And I mean, it ended with him being, the mega bad guy and whatnot. But like, we got the reaction that we wanted, and it was very awesome. It was very, very cool to see and just have that kind of feeling. It's like, oh, all right. And then, like, honestly, I would say that tag match with the ladder match, that was one of the best matches that I've had ever. There's quite a few. I've had a couple of good matches with a tag team called Southern Discomfort. Um, they're pretty up there with the chemistry for myself and Danny. But there was something of like we did a whole angle where DNA were using brass knuckles to win against us. So of course they used the brass knuckles to beat us for the belts and TIW. And so we did a thing for like 3 or 4 months down the line, maybe 5 months. We won the right to face them as number one contenders, but it was in the ladder match. And we did a whole thing where like basically I caught him trying to use the brass knuckles, and we got the belts and everything else. And it's just, good 250 people losing their minds because you just pulled down the tag titles. It was just a really cool experience to have. And yeah, it's a nice way to kick off the second reign with Danny. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it
it's
sounds
pretty
like it's
cool.
almost a perfect story. Like you said, like the right story leading up to the right just match, and everything is kind of falling into place. Even though it wasn't the way it originally was supposed to go, it all still lined up and
Right,
winning.
right,
Um,
absolutely.
and sometimes going with the flow is just the way to go in wrestling, it seems, because you hear that so many times that sometimes things will just get changed or they'll even work off the crowd or somebody gets, out last minute. There's always something in wrestling, nothing ever runs on like perfectly. So it's like, but sometimes these
Right,
little minor changes make sometimes better. You never know. But it's good to be versatile. It's good to be able to work like that and be able to just, bounce into just whatever you're thrown. I think that's one of wrestlers' superpowers. They're able to just kind of just whatever's thrown at them, whatever's happening, whatever's going on, they're able just to kind of just shift it and make
Pivot.
pivots as they go,
Yep.
and that's
Yep.
that's very commendable.
Well, like, all right, fun fact. Like when I at the NCW show with the Rumble, I wasn't supposed to be in the Rumble. I got thrown into it. That's fine. Like I know how to operate. It's all right. Let's go. Beat me up a bit. Everybody hates me. Let's go. Like
Are
it's
you
not that
used to
hard.
playing? Are you used to playing the heel, the bad guy? You think? Like you
Um,
guys as a
no,
team?
actually, like recently for the longest time we were faces. Um, I would say Danny has a lot more recent experience being a heel. I don't have a problem being a heel. Um, I think for me, it's just weird for me to switch back and forth on a regular. But I mean, as a wrestler, I should be okay with it. It's just more of basically there for me. There's a way to change my goofy delivery, if you will. Like there's a way to be goofy good guy, and there's a way to be a goofy bad guy. The way I do it is as a bad guy, it's very easy for me to just be annoying. So the more annoying I am, the more people want to see me get my ass kicked. And the more
Yeah.
they want to see that, the better bad guy I am. I don't have to worry about throwing moves out there because as long as people care about me getting beat up, then I've already done my job.
Yeah, you're basically there just to take the brunt of it and to be that almost
Right.
comedic person to take it. Um,
Right. But then on the other side, as a good guy, it's also for me easy to be that goofy, like, yay, RussTache. Like, there's if you can latch on to the RussTache gimmick, because I mean, for instance, my finishing move is called the RussTache ride. Like,
yeah,
you know,
I mean, the whole
I
thing is just, it's great. You see that, you see people that have these kind of gimmicks in wrestling. It's just like, damn, like there's a guy out there. I think he might even be from that area, like abs, right? Just he has big abs,
oh
nothing
yeah,
else,
I think
right?
he's more from the Pennsylvania or Jersey area, but
Pennsylvania a little
yeah,
bit out,
yeah,
yeah, but
abs.
yeah, again, it just again, if you get that gimmick, it's just his gimmick. It's like
Abs is great.
you can ride that
Oh, it's
all
so good.
day.
Yeah.
And it's these little things in wrestling. It doesn't take all this production and costumes and all this. It just takes a really simple kind of little cosmetic feature
Just
and
a,
just latch onto it, make everything about it, and just drag it as long as you can, and it works.
right.
At least in wrestling. Anywhere else, maybe not, but wrestling it will work.
Well,
Um,
also, I mean, like, there's ways to still like, although you could like you said, pivot. Like, if I was only doing just the mustache thing and just only doing mustache things, that would eventually get boring. But there's stuff that I hold on to that like I haven't done yet because it's going to mean something when I do it. Like, there's no point in doing it if all I'm doing it is just for that quick little, oh, like, no, no, let's hold on to that until it actually matters, until there's actually a pivot point for it to mean something.
and
So,
then yeah,
like,
because even with each pivot, it's almost like you evolve a little bit too. As a character,
right,
you get better, or
right,
you change.
right. Like, because kind of like what you're saying with abs, he still has pivots and he has different little evolutions of the abs character as he goes along because if it was just, I mean, but abs that's a pretty great character in general. I mean, it's just, it's one of those ones where you see just like, I wish I thought of that, but
Yeah, like
you
yeah, it's
know,
just it's one of those things, but it reminds me a lot of that when you see cosmetic feature gimmicks, it's like those are brilliant.
right,
That's genius. That's workable. You can do so much with it. Like you said, you got to ride the stat. Your finisher move. That's a catchy name. People can remember that in their
right,
head. That makes people
right,
laugh. It makes adults laugh. Definitely, kids are like
right,
they're laughing for a different reason. But it fits all
right,
the
right.
demos that are at that party. You know what I'm saying? Everybody there, it means something different,
Absolutely.
but it's funny. Um,
And I would
I don't know.
I would say for that, that's the part that kind of makes it tough for me sometimes to remember, like, all right, like with the kids thing, like, I don't have any children myself, but I do appreciate them as fans, and there are times where I'm a bad guy and like one will go for the pound. I'm like, oh right, I'm supposed to make them hate me. I'm like, I'll come back to that, and like I'll do something later where like they go for a high five, and then I'll make like I'm farting in my hand and then wave it in their face. I'm not actually doing that, but they don't know that. So it's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
you know, it's just like,
But
oh, right,
you're always
I gotta
gonna
pick
have
on them
fans
a little
like
bit.
you're always gonna have fans like me too that also enjoy the bad guy, like the bad guy, like to see the bad guy. Like I like to see horror
That's
movies,
a
bad
bit
guys
different.
win.
Like, but you're an adult though. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you get
But
it.
I
You
was
know
like
what's
that as
part
a
of the show
kid
and
too,
whatnot.
though. But even as a
Yeah,
kid, like I went to a show to see, HBK beat Bret Hart. I didn't go there to see Bret Hart retain. I wanted to see HBK win. I liked him.
that's
I liked
fair.
the bad guys. Same
That's
thing like
fair.
I said, but I kind of passed that along to my kid where he's like, he doesn't really know the good bad thing. He doesn't know that there's supposed to be a good or bad. He just sees two people and he either likes you or doesn't like you, and he wants somebody to win. But he'll go out there
Right.
and he'll want to high five everybody because, to him, everybody's a star. It doesn't matter if you're good or bad. You're all stars.
That makes sense. I mean, like when I was a kid, I was a huge Roddy Piper and Macho Man fan, and like Jake the Snake. You know, like and those guys at the time that I liked them, they were very bad guys. So like it kind of makes sense because it wasn't like one of those things where I was emulating bad guys. It wasn't like I was like the $1 million man trying to pay somebody off to let me like slap him or whatever. Like so, it just
No,
I was a fan of the performance.
for me, a lot of the time, well, I'm a horror fan, so I always like the horror characters. That was part of the reason why I like the bad guys in wrestling. Also, I like the bad guys in wrestling because I find like they bring different characters to the scene. A lot of the good guys, growing up, they kind of wore old as I got older.
Mm,
It was hard for me to be a fan of this, the super baby face as I was a teenager. I needed that edginess. I needed that NWO or, DX kind of attitude to kind of feel it. It was very
right.
hard for me to stand behind people like John Cena. I could appreciate it, but I can't go out there and I couldn't feel like it was right for me to actually cheer for it. Not saying that again, I don't, like I said, didn't like or appreciate it, but just as what I wanted to see as a wrestler. Also, later I would have learned that the heels got a little bit more of a job to do as far as match wise. They're the ones that got to make the guys look good. They're the ones that have to they have a little bit of control in the match, and it's a little bit different of a role than the good guy would have.
Mm. Uh,
But
I mean, I can agree. I can agree with that to a degree. Like, I would say yes. Like, yeah, when it comes down to making the good guys look good, like, yeah, like if you have bad guys that are bad at being bad and people are cheering for them, you're not going to have a lot of. It's almost like a strange like popularity contest in live action, whereas opposed to you know actually like going out there and being despised.
yeah, but I mean, like I said, like if let's just say that the good guy's not getting the right amount of cheers. Let's say he's not really over. You can easily do something to get him more over, whether it's you disrespecting the fans or the crowd or anybody.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Sorry, I do have children, and they always need something. This
That's
time it's
okay.
a phone. This time it's a phone.
Hey, it's
No,
easy
but
to solve.
yeah, it's an easy one. No, it's around that bedtime. He likes to watch a little bit of TV at this time. Helps him relax. Only if we had that as kids. We didn't have that. We had I had a Teddy Ruxpin, I think, and maybe a Light Bright. That's about it.
Oh,
No,
same.
no phones. um, but yeah, I mean, sometimes you can see that happening. And also just I don't know, something about the bad guys, the way they interact. Just being. I appreciate the way that they can just take all that heat. They can go out there and say some of the craziest things. The fans will say even crazier things back, and they just brush it off and go home at the end
Well,
of the day laughing, knowing that they did a good job because they got those people that mad.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Um, I also feel like, as strange as it may sound, like especially with more awareness of how character building works and what have you, I feel like sometimes the better bad guys. eventually become really great good guys, like just because, just depending on the justification, whether or not they're involved in a decent enough story to make that swivel,
Well, I mean, they could
but
even be that good. I mean, nothing but look at what someone like Alec Price, right? He was hated, 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 hated. And I remember one show he went out, people just started cheering. He might have not
right,
have liked it, but they liked him. And that can happen to any
right,
character. They can like you whether you want to be hated or not. You can see that, people will come out, they're supposed to be the heel, but they got a big fan base. People are cheering for them.
right,
And they have to
right.
kind of be like, but at the end of the day, they become, like you said, great babyface. And in any kind of storyline, it can easily change. Look at Roman
Well, not
Reigns
only
in the
that, but
WWE. That changed pretty quickly. Babyface, heel,
but
babyface.
even on the indie level, you could still have fun with that. I mean, like you said, like you're aware of how this stuff works and whatnot. So like, say if there was a section of folks that were like cheering for me, like when we were at NCW and like we were in the tag team trios and we were the only bad guys and like we had our own section. Every once in a while, I would go to them, go hey, and then as people would cheer, I just go stop it. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
don't
yeah.
need it. Like it's a very simplistic thing, but it's like also people are aware of that's how like you got to have fun with it because if you don't, it's just like because that's the other part of it is it's part fan interaction, it's part getting people involved at least to a degree, like
You need that
not so
banter.
much.
No, you don't want any
Right,
physical altercation, obviously, but the key is to get
right,
enough banter going that the emotion is right
yep,
at the edge, and then obviously it
absolutely,
cools down.
yeah, absolutely.
I've been to
So
shows where you see fans get up out of their seat and they want to go in, but they know enough obviously to stop. But it's like they've gotten them
right,
that mad that they've stood up. They've gotten okay. You've got my attention now. But that's
right,
good.
right,
You'll see. You'll hear the bad guy later say that was one of my favorite parts of the night of getting that guy so mad. That means I did a great job, and I think that's just fun in general. Finding ways of getting people mad because it's not as easy. You can't go out and use vulgar language. You can't swear at them. You can't do anything that you
no,
would think you can. It has to be
right,
creatively done. And that's where I find it
right,
fun. How can you creatively piss me off?
right, right,
And
right,
everybody has their own way. Like you said, either you could be super annoying, you could be that evil kind of guy. You could be like sadistic, you could be cruel, you could be any kind of way. But like I said, you got to have this kind of little rules. Again, no language. You got to keep it kind of kid friendly. You got to keep it this way and that way.
mm-hmm,
And it's like, so you got to maneuver all that, still be a bad guy, still get hated. They're going to swear at you, but you can't really swear back. And
right.
again, you got to lead with the happy attitude because you really can't let it get to you.
No, of course not. I think that's the
Um,
part of it that's the easier aspect of being a heel is that the part where it doesn't really get to me is because I know it's a performance, and so I have faith that people are aware that it's a performance. There have been times where children have cried, and I feel bad about that, but I won't address that until after the show. You know what I mean? Like it's just like all right, like I'll talk to the
yeah.
kid after the match or the show or whatever, but
No,
for the
wrestling's
time
definitely
being, it's like
evolved.
they're yeah,
I feel like if it was like 80s and
absolutely.
70s, 80s, and people like if you got a certain crowd mad, they might actually want to fight you after. They'd be like, no, let's just beat this guy up.
True, true. I feel like
But
that happens a lot less nowadays.
yeah, most of the time the fans, like you said, they understand the banter game that it's going to happen. Their job is to kind of boo you. You might piss them off. You're going to have a good time. Everybody's having a laugh though. Um,
Right.
and I think that's part of wrestling, having that fun, having that laugh. Because for me, wrestling, it happens Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's the end of the week. That's the escape. That's getting out of the real life and into the wrestling life. That's getting into the promotions worlds. They're little micro universes where people are champions and there's all this fantasy and stuff happening. For me, that's the escape. I love it. So I
Yeah.
look forward to that. That's what gets me out of the real world.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, like that's part of the whole point. It's just, it's a good escapism thing. It's a nice distraction from the normal everyday drudgery. Like
Yeah,
it's
because I mean, normally every day you're not going to get to go see somebody, taking suplexes or throwing people through tables or just doing anything because it's just not part of everyday life. but you can see that
Right.
at a show. You know. Now let me ask you. I got a few more questions for you. One is, you did say you're making your way down New England here. We did see NCW, Senior Proving Ground. Is there any tag teams on this area in this scene that you have eyes on?
Oh man, absolutely. I mean, like, definitely would like to run back with the Hoods or DCMC. That was very, very good interaction to have at NCW. Um, Monarch. I mean, there's just so many tag teams in this area that are just. It's. I mean, we're going to go against the Dickbusters coming up. The
Yep.
Losers. I would love to face the Losers, the Collective. Um, I mean, hell, going all the way up there, Miracle Generation. That's those. There's just so many tag teams in the
I
New
mean,
England scene that it's
yeah,
just.
I mean, they're being right now called like the next Young Bucks, the Miracle Generation. People just looking at them
Oh
on
yeah,
them on a different level. And it's like, there's some kids that have just been really working hard at what they want to do and doing it, and I feel
absolutely.
like in today's wrestling world, it's not. Yes, it is still about who you know, and sure, connections can get you places, but not as prevalent as it was in the days past. I feel like today, if you really do work hard and really put yourself out there, that you can get noticed. It's not impossible to get where you want to
Right,
be.
right. Oh, Perfect Strangers. That's another tag team.
There
Like,
you go.
there's just
Yes.
uh, Black and Yellow has been traveling more. There's so many tag teams out there. Team Friendship, Adam Stone and Mike Skyros. There's just those guys are more New York, but like it's just it, there's it's one of those things where I want to say 5 or 6 years ago is when I was first starting to team with people because I traded off a couple tag partners over the years. Um, there was tag teams. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't. It just I feel like it's an embarrassment of riches is the best way to put it at this point. It's like just put me in there with somebody. We're going to tear it up. Like it's just there's I know there's a whole ton of tag teams that I did not list that like are probably just a sidestep away that I'm just like, oh right, these guys, oh, hard work heroes. I mean, just
Yeah.
I could if I just sat
Right
here and
now,
just
we are
kept
very
thinking
rich
about it.
in tag team wrestling, which I mean, I have to say we're
Right.
very. It's a very good thing. It's not a bad thing to be oversaturated in
Oh
tag
no,
wrestling
not at
because
all.
every show needs a tag match or two, and you don't have to run the same match twice. You could have, dozens of combinations
Right.
of tag matches that never hit those same matches because, I mean, let's face it, nobody's
Right.
contracted. So show to show, you're going to see these same teams try to perform. But you can do different stories, different players, different everything because there is that many good tag teams, legitimate tag teams.
Absolutely.
And it's a great scene right now for wrestling. I feel, and indie wrestling especially. I think it's a real good boom period. And that's one thing that I have noticed during this boom period is tag team wrestling skyrocketing because there is really, like I said, good teams on the scene, and they are following that kind of young bucks, Hardy Boys kind of model of like we can do it, we can do it, we can do it, we can do whatever we want. Like sky's the limit.
Right.
And I love seeing that because, like I said, the kids that are, I call them kids, I'm seeing in the halls today, they will be on TV someday. They can be on TV someday. People in NCW have been on TV someday or will be.
Right.
AG, he was in NCW as a ref. He went into WWE. He's half a Noah champion in Japan. Like, it all starts in little places, and I love to be there for it. That's like, part of it. And like I said, I can't wait to see more. I can't wait to see you Saturday at Dick Busters, against them. I think that's going to be a really fun match. Knowing what they can do, seeing what you can do. I think you guys are going to put on a hell of a performance. Proving Ground again, one of my favorite shows. This one especially is going to be special for the first time, probably last time ever. Chase Del Monte taking on Stephen Lust. That's like an insane matchup because he really doesn't really leave chaotic wrestling, honestly.
Right. Like I wasn't that aware of it until I heard the name Chase, and then I was like, wait a minute. And then talking it over with Danny, he's like, yeah, that's actually a big rarity these days. So it's going to be pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, I'm very excited for the show. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Proving Ground, but sometimes you just get these matchups that you don't see anywhere, and it's just like, wow, wow.
Right.
Where else what any other promotions you got on the horizon for yourselves that you're looking forward to this year?
Uh, Right now, we're trying to just keep pushing along. We're trying to go back to NCW. We're trying to go to Proving Grounds again after this coming show. See if they want to have us again. See if our
You hearing
menacing
that,
is.
Derek Simonetti and JC Marks? You listening? Okay, RussTache wants
But
back in.
we're probably going to try to go up to Maine a little bit.
Yes, yes.
There's
There's
been
so much
talks
up
of
there too.
oh, absolutely, and there's talks of going to Green Mountain and whatnot. But for the time
Green
being, we're
Mountain
trying
sounds
to.
good.
Yep, we're trying to keep our presence known in the New England area. So
If
yeah,
you
we'll
go
be
too
back
far
around.
up, if you go too far up in Maine, it's going to be a beard versus mustache match. Got to be
Oh,
careful up there.
that's fair.
Like a
We'll
lumberjack
see.
match.
We'll see. Right.
um, so let me ask you, where can people find you on social media? How can
On
people
social
follow you
media, you
along?
can find me at RussTache on Facebook, and you can also find me on Instagram at Captain Derpface, like DERP face. So yeah,
Very cool, very cool. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I can't wait to see you Saturday. I can't wait for that match. Again, you guys against the Dick Bus. It's gonna be a lot of fun. That's in Peabody, Massachusetts. Thank you though. Thank you so much though for your time.
absolutely. Thank you kindly. I'll see you on Saturday.
And thank you everybody at home for watching VSW. As always, support indie wrestling. Versace Stoner out.